Welcome to the Allison Lombardi Show, a podcast to help women discover and rediscover their confidence and style. I'm Allison Lombardi, and I'm grateful you hit play on today's episode because I know you are going to love it. As I just mentioned, this podcast is about helping you discover and rediscover your confidence and style. And while my area of expertise is confidence as it relates to wardrobe, it's important for me to use this platform to encourage you in all areas of your life, not just your clothes. And when I'm not the expert, I am delighted to introduce you to other voices who are. Which brings me to today's guest, Kelsey Nixon. Kelsey is a cooking expert, a busy wife and mom, and a cooking channel and Food Network television star with appearances on Iron Chef America, Chopped, Beat Bobby Flay, Cutthroat Kitchen, and more. She's the author behind the Kitchen Confidence Cookbook, host of the Kitchen Prescription podcast, and the creator of the brilliant meal planning system, Recipe Club, that makes getting a healthy meal on the table for your family easier than ever. Just wait until you hear about her one-click grocery shopping feature. Kelsey has solved dinner time decision fatigue once and for all. If you haven't subscribed to the show yet, please take a moment to do it now. By doing so, you'll get new episodes directly in your listening feed so you won't miss a thing. And if you enjoyed listening to the show, I would be so grateful if you take a moment to rate it and leave a review. I know it seems like a small thing, but your rating and review really do help, especially for new shows like this one. And now, let's dive into my chat with Kelsey Nixon. Hey, Kelsey, welcome to the show. I'm so glad to have you here.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Allison.
Well, I am super excited to talk to you today because I feel like your area of expertise is one that every single one of us, without exception, has to tackle because we all have to eat dinner every day. And for many of us, it is not just about us, but it's about feeding our families too. So as you know, I am in the style space and I serve my community by helping them get dressed every day. And getting dressed is also not optional. And neither is eating dinner. So we all have to eat. And I love how you solve that. I love how you solve that dreaded daily question. I hate this one. What's for dinner? And how you've made it just so incredibly easy with your recipe club system.
Yeah, you know what's crazy about that question is you can even be someone who loves to cook and you still hate thinking about what to make for dinner. Similarly to maybe your clients where you could have someone who loves fashion and loves putting on a great outfit, but that step of deciding what to wear, it's that decision fatigue that we have to make so many decisions every single day. So I'm such a fan of setting up systems that kind of help us, or formulas that really help us make those decisions that we have, those questions we have to answer every single day.
Yes. Systems rule the world, frameworks, everything. Like, give me all the frameworks and systems to run my life on a daily basis. Because I'm not going to lie, I have like this love-hate relationship with cooking. When I'm on, but when I'm off and it just becomes another part of the day, like that's when I really just need to have something that I can just fall back on and rely upon that system to make it super easy for me. So Kelsey, I would love to know more about your career in cooking and how you ended up where you are today with Recipe Club.
It has been a wild ride and it's a great story. Ultimately, it's all rooted in the fact that I grew up in a home where we loved food and the food was at the center of all of my happiest memories, all of our traditions and the holidays. And I had a full-time working mom in our household. And one thing, regardless of her busy working schedule, she really did love to make dinner and it was really important to her. So she consistently put dinner on the table and she rarely complained about it. In fact, I think I complained about it way more as a food professional than my mom ever did. But it's almost like she found stress relief in a way. She looked forward to it. And I think that behavior she modeled really had a profound impact on me developing my own passion for food. But ultimately, I went to college and I had started to get a degree in broadcast journalism. And what I realized pretty quickly is that the news felt pretty depressing, but it was right when Food Network was getting off the ground. And I thought, food TV, that seems interesting to me. So I got my degree in broadcast journalism. I spent some summers interning at some incredible places like Martha Stewart Living and the Food Network. And after graduating, I ended up going to culinary school and I was really committed to figuring out how to work in food television. So I'd done like a college cooking show while I was in school that was terrible, but it was a great way to get my feet wet and really kind of figure out the industry. And then my big break, I was on a reality show on Food Network called Food Network Star, where everybody was competing to win their own cooking show. And we'd do these crazy challenges where we'd cook in unique places with one hand tied behind your back and then crazy ingredients. It was wild. But I didn't win that show, but I did do well enough that I made it towards the end. And throughout that show, one of the judges was Bobby Flay. And Bobby Flay is not only an incredible host, but he's also a producer. And so he reached out after being on Next Food Network Star and said, I think you've got something. Why don't we pitch a show to the network together? And I'd love to produce it. So then that kicked off a relationship with Bobby and his production company for the better part of a decade, where I was hosting cooking shows on Food Network and Cooking Channel, really teaching people how to cook. And it was just a decade of pinch me moments of ending up in the same room as people like Ina Garten and Rachel Ray. And it was really, really fun. I wrote cookbooks and I had a product line that I sold through the Home Shopping Network. And that was fantastic. But as you know, media has changed so much in the past couple of years as we've migrated from network television to streaming platforms and whatnot. And as that shift kind of happened and Food Network were sold, I got the itch to start something of my own, all my own. I really had this entrepreneurial bug. And I decided to start a company. It was my COVID pivot in 2020. And I'd spent all these years teaching people how to cook on traditional television. And I thought, I really want to build something that is based or rooted in a simple dinner system, something people can repeat over and over again to simplify getting dinner on the table. And I want to do it through a membership platform. And so I entered my entrepreneurial era, kicked off Recipe Club. And now thousands of members later, here we are, we're heading into year 3 of Recipe Club. And it's just been fantastic.
Oh my gosh, what an inspiring and incredible journey. And it was kind of all kicked off by your mom being in the kitchen and cooking. And I just love that part of it. Were you the kid that was hanging out in the kitchen helping? And were you encouraged to explore that passion? And second, do you invite your kids into the kitchen now?
Yes. Look, my kids are 4, 7, and 11. And so you see all those cute pictures of making cookies with a 4-year-old, but ultimately it's a very stressful situation. So I do my best, but I'm also a very normal person and we live in a very normal household. And there are times when I just have to let it go. But in speaking to kind of the feeling that my own mother created in the kitchen, yes, I mean, she definitely had certain things that she liked to do certain ways. But I think almost the more important thing than my mom saying, hey, will you whisk this or pop this in the oven, is my mom was really committed to the why. Why do we do that? Why do we have this ritual where we come to the table every day and we break bread as a family? And it was so important to the extent that even if it was, us kids had been at our different activities, baseball and dance and cheerleading and whatever, if it was 9 p.m. when we all sat at the table and we sat there with 3 boxes of cold cereal, we sat at the table together. And I think that's what impacted me the most is that, yes, the food is fun and the recipes are great and you need those resources so that you don't feel like you're making the same things over and over again. But the why is the connection. And that is what I now feel so passionately about with my own family that's starting to go in a million different directions as our lives get busy is, yes, we got to feed everybody, but we have to connect with everybody. And that's what's most important.
So good. Yes. Whenever our kids were in high school and everybody was going in different directions, we had 2 nights of the week where we knew everyone's schedule was overlapping, where we could sit down and have that dinner together. And honestly, those are some of my favorite memories of having our kids at home. We're just having everyone around the table. And even to this day, now that they're adults and they're off on their own, when we can get together and do our Sunday dinners, it's about that connection and connecting over food is just such a special way to do that. So, I love that so much. So on the podcast, we dive into style.
I love that you mentioned 2 days a week, Allison, because I think sometimes people feel really overwhelmed that they're supposed to make dinner every single night. And in theory, yes, we got to eat every night. But if this is something that you want to start to prioritize, just deciding we're going to do this one night a week, we're all going to sit at the table together, or 2 nights a week, that is the perfect place to start. And when someone's got a house full of toddlers versus teenagers, it's just very different. So it's not going to be a one size fits all. So making it as easy as possible. Do not set an unrealistic goal. But one night a week, even one night a week of connecting with your family around the table will have unbelievable benefits for your family culture.
So good. Yes. So much less overwhelming when we just give ourselves permission to say 2 nights a week, doable. We can do that. I love that. So on the podcast, we dive into our style stories and we talk about, our family members or magazines or models and celebrities that really just influenced our style or made an impression on us in our younger years. So you already mentioned your mom, but did you have any other culinary influences growing up or cuisines that especially interested you? Or were there any cookbooks, for instance, that you loved or cooking shows that were your favorite?
Yes. So, oh my goodness. Well, it sounds a little expected, but probably Martha Stewart was always on in the household. And my mom was so good to not only, and look, like I said, we were a normal family. We had hot dogs for dinner some nights and we had a beef, Wellington on other nights. Like she would take her moments, but there were times when she really put effort into not just the food, but the whole experience. And I think about that often because I think it was people like Martha Stewart who really brought that idea of entertaining and thinking about the plate and the napkin and setting the table in a way that it evokes a feeling. And it certainly does not have to be very often, but those moments, like for example, me, I mentioned I got young kids. I make an effort on my kids' birthdays that they get to pick the menu. So if it's mac and cheese and hamburgers, we're having mac and cheese and hamburgers. They get to pick the menu. But taking a nod from my mom, I really try to make an effort to create almost like a scene, right? Like this is special. We're going to hang the banner. We're going to add the balloons. We're going to pull out the nice dishes. Because those core memories around the table and making it a little bit nicer, I still hang on to those and I still have those memories. And I loved seeing my mom do it. And now I kind of like carrying on that tradition. So Martha's an obvious one. But as far as Food Network goes, my mom loved Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa, mostly because her cookbooks were, I think, some of the first where she took some elevated flavors, but really made the recipes very, very simple. And I saw my mom latch onto that style of cooking where maybe instead of using dried herbs all the time, we're going to use fresh herbs. We're going to see what the difference is between adding dried basil to a caprese salad versus fresh basil. And some of those elevated ingredients just really making a big difference. So even now, I am not drawn to overly complicated recipes. I am drawn to simple recipes, but it's more about knowing which ingredients to really make that extra investment in. I'm all for a shortcut every now and then, but I feel like my mom was a great example of that. And people like Martha on one extreme of being super fancy and super over the top, and someone like Ina who really tried to simplify that a bit. I feel like a lot of inspiration came in that.
It's interesting because Martha's like that, bringing that everyday entertaining aspect into really making it mainstream for so many of us. And I love how you've drawn the elements of that into your celebrations. And also, yes, like fresh herbs are such a game changer and so simple. Like they're right there in the produce section. This isn't something, or you can grow them so easily in your own little container garden. Like this is such an accessible thing that just makes a huge difference. And it's not expensive either, which I also love. So amazing tips. Something I've been thinking about lately is not just with making dinner, but in so many aspects of life that we have this perceived or implied pressure for women that we just have to do it all, right? So years ago, you might have had like a handful of favorite cookbooks or that treasured box of handwritten family recipes. But now we've got access to things like Pinterest and social media, and it's everywhere. There's all the food blogs, and there's these perfectly styled plates that honestly, they can skew our expectations of what is good enough when it comes to mealtime. And if it's not organic or it has like the balanced food groups, right, or in the exact right portion size, then it's not good enough. And heaven forbid, I'm guilty of this, but heaven forbid you should feed your kids Lunchables, right? So how do you suggest that?
Right. Or dino nuggets. I'm in the dino nugget phase.
Yes. Oh, please. My almost 20-year-old is home from college right now, and dino nuggets are like in the microwave or air fryer every single day. It never ends. I'm just letting you know.
I know. With my first kid, I was like, I'm not going to be a dino nugget. With my third kid, I'm like, I'm a dino nugget mom. It's fine. It's fine. We'll balance it out.
Yes, yes. And I mean, they come in whole grain versions and gluten-free now. So, okay, we're going to give ourselves permission. But how do you suggest balancing the needs of your family with what is realistic when we are all just so busy and honestly, we're just trying to do our best?
It's such a great question because I do like to think of because I am in it with my members of Recipe Club. I live, breathe, and feel the daily stresses of trying to get dinner on the table for my family. And like I said, I've been in this industry for 20 years now. It's still hard for me to make dinner for my family because of all of these other factors we just come off of the school year where there was every assembly and awards ceremony and the Little League spring tournaments. There's just so many things. Our lives are so busy right now. And so I have to make it simple or else I get overwhelmed. And so with the ages of my kids, this is really what I try and teach them is that when we sit down to have a meal, there's just a couple of things we're trying to get in there. We're going to try and have some sort of vegetable. We're going to have some sort of fruit. And we're going to have some sort of protein. Like literally that's it. And if my kids leave home knowing that that's what kind of constitutes a meal, great. We don't need to get further beyond that. And there are times in raising young kids who are picky where the only vegetable they're interested in are baby carrots. And you know what? I just let it be. It is what it is. We're going to eat a lot of baby carrots during this chapter. We do have kind of a little tradition within our family. My two youngest are girls. And so one thing we offer in Recipe Club is all of our recipes have a step-by-step tutorial video. And then we offer a parent plate image and a picky eater plate. And so I'm a big fan of deconstructing dinner so that I'm not making multiple recipes. So I might make skillet chicken enchiladas for me, my husband, and my oldest, but I know my girls are not going to eat the fully composed chicken enchilada. And so by having that deconstructed reference, I know that I'm going to pull out some of the shredded chicken. I'm going to pull out the avocado. I'm going to pull out the cheese and so forth. And what our policy is at the family dinner table is if you don't want to eat it, you don't have to, but you have to take a princess bite. And for whatever reason, we call them princess bites. They just have to try it. And sometimes it only makes it to the lips and they don't even swallow, but that's it. Just got to try it because you may hate every other vegetable other than baby carrots at 4 years old, but that is probably not going to be the case for your whole life. And so I do feel passionately about continuing to expose my kids to foods. I don't ever want to make it a stressful thing for them to be at the table, but things like that. Like if we're home, we're just starting summer. And so we'll be doing a lot of summer lunches at home. And especially my 11-year-old, where he's kind of making some of those lunches on his own now. I'm like, dude, you just got to have a vegetable, a fruit, and some sort of protein on the plate. And that's kind of one easy system, even for my kids, that I can kind of talk about. And that makes me feel like I'm getting them somewhat of a well-rounded, diet without getting too stressed about what's organic, what's not organic, and so forth.
I love that. You've given them that formula that they can just continue to apply, hopefully, when they're out of the house, right? It's going to make it that much simpler for them to be able to meal plan for themselves and throw things together too. So you're really just empowering them to make those decisions. It's just so simple and so powerful when we're able to give them those tools so that they can replicate it on their own.
Yeah. And especially when the category of food, right? I think that it can feel overwhelming to think that you've got a responsibility to teach your kids how to feed themselves, but we kind of do to a certain extent. And when they, in your kids' chapters of life, when they head off to college, even a couple of basic understandings about food and what they should focus on eating, I think is important. And if you can have some of those core family recipes, those recipes that they maybe have grown up to love, that's a great way to get your kids excited about food. And it's almost like I've got a greatest hits list in my mind where it's like, my kids, I'm hoping that they'll leave home knowing how to make this, and this, because these are recipes that mean something to our family and hopefully invoke great memories around the table with their family members.
So good. I love that. I love it. So we've been talking about the kids just getting out of school. We're actually going to be airing this during back to school season. So I'm glad that we started this discussion, because I think for many of us, especially those with younger kids at home, summer is a little bit hectic because we get, more relaxed about rules and schedules. But back to school means falling back into those routines and structures so that we can better manage the homework and the bedtimes and all of those after school activities that come along with a new school year. So what tips do you have to help busy moms with getting back into the back to school flow, especially that post-school pre-dinner witching hour when everyone gets home and they're like, I'm hungry, mom. But giving them snacks, of course, means that they're not going to be hungry for dinner and your kids are tired after that long day of school. So what survival strategies do you have for the moms out there?
So this is my best tip for the mom that's feeling some of those pains that you just described. And it might be somewhat unconventional and might not work for every family structure, but my best tip is to have dinner earlier. Kids come home so hungry. And I have found that if you've got kids in a lot of after school activities, that's kind of the chapter I'm heading into with the ages of my kids, we have a greater likelihood of having dinner together, or at least a couple members of our family, if we do dinner earlier, even like as early as 4:30. And then that after school snack that we're used to having, that's what comes after we've returned home from the baseball game or the dance recital or whatever it may be. So bumping up dinner has been a huge help for me and something maybe people could consider. The other thing I just cannot preach it loud enough from the mountaintops. Creating a meal plan, sitting down once a week, having a habit where you say, let's look at our family schedule. What nights is it realistic that I'm going to be cooking? And what nights are we going to be maybe driving through Chick-fil-A or relying on the freezer for X, Y, and Z? Giving yourself the gift of deciding once a week what you plan to eat each night, rather than asking yourself every single day, what am I going to make for dinner? That can literally transform your life because it reduces so much of that decision fatigue and that daily stress. And then if I know on Monday we're making baked ziti because we're actually all going to be home, I can think, is there anything I could do during this, 2-hour time block that might even get me ahead for dinner? And it's nice. I've kind of found myself getting into that habit is once I've made the decision of what we're making, I can do little things here and there to make dinner even easier if I know the back half of my day is going to be more intense than the front half.
Oh, so good. So good. I love this idea of moving dinner time up. That is, that's life-changing right there. Seriously. I struggle with this so much with my kids growing up. We still do even to this day, I feel like, and we're an early dinner family. And you're right. Like we've replaced that mid-afternoon snack with the nighttime snack. And that's okay. Like if we're a little bit hungry before bed, then we have our yogurt and our things that we can grab and still have that. So that's such a game changer. And also just really sitting down and being intentional about that planning portion of it allows you then to know, hey, I have the things that I need for the week ahead. We've got all of our staples covered. We have all the ingredients that we need. We don't have to worry about rushing out to the store midweek and making sure that we have what we need to make this meal. So, really being successful in this space is about having the right things in place for the job. And with getting dressed, I like to call these your closet staples pieces that you have in place, because that's what's going to make creating the outfit easier. So do you have maybe a top 3 or 5 list of kitchen essentials, tools, even appliances or gadgets that you think make the job that much easier?
Yes, absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And I love outfit formulas. And one of the things I love about outfit formulas is you encourage people, don't buy anything new. First, look at what you have on hand and get rid of anything you are not using. So I would say we could apply this same strategy to our kitchens. If you bought an Instant Pot 6 years ago and you haven't used it in 4 years, it's okay to get rid of it. It's really easy for our kitchens to start to collect all sorts of gadgets and things that we think we might need one day. And what that ends up becoming is just clutter in the most used area of our homes. So a good kitchen declutter, I'm a huge fan of it, and applying those same principles of if I'm not using it, I'm going to get rid of this. And I'm going to focus on getting really good core pieces, like a great chef's knife and a great big cutting board. Too many people are trying to make dinner with dull knives. And I cannot emphasize enough how much a good sharp knife will make the process of preparing dinner. It'll go faster. It'll be more enjoyable. And lots of people think, oh, I'm terrible at cooking. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that you're still cooking with the same cookware you got for your wedding 25 years ago. And your knives haven't been sharpened and you don't have good tools. So having some great, skillets, great cookware, I would say a knife, a cutting board, and an awesome, I'm going to get specific here, like a 12-inch skillet that's got 2 handles. I would consider investing in like a Le Creuset or a Staub. My favorite style is actually a brazier, but I love making quick skillet meals. I think so many people oftentimes have cookware that's too small. So they're trying to make a family dinner in a 10-inch skillet. And once again, they're thinking, I'm terrible at this. This is not working. But it's because they're not set up with the right tools. So if you're going to ask me for 3 tools, I'm going to say a sharp knife, a big cutting board. So you have a nice big surface to do all of your preparation on. And I'm going to say like a 12-inch dual handled, like heavy bottom skillet. Those are the 3 that I live and die by and use all of the time in my kitchen. When it comes to ingredients, it's a little more specific based on the family needs. But I do think, similar to outfit formulas, before you even decide what you're going to make for dinner that week, if you can get in the habit of looking what you already have on hand, not only will it help with your decision fatigue, because if you know that you've got chicken that needs to be used up, you need to make a chicken recipe. But it also is a great way to save money. If you're not wasting as much food, and right now, especially with the cost of groceries, it's a critical step to try and use up what you have on hand and so forth. But yeah.
Ah, so good. So good. Yes. I can attest to the fact that sharp knives are life-changing. I can't tell you how many years I tolerated those dull knives, like trying to cut the tomato and it's squashing everywhere. Like, yes, just invest in the sharp knives. Your future self will thank you. And absolutely, that skillet is, again, a total game changer. So easy to clean out when you get the right cookware, and everything just, it heats evenly and does what it's supposed to do and makes your life so much easier, especially when you're doing those one skillet meals. I absolutely love that. Amazing, amazing tips. So I want to talk a little bit more about this incredible system that you've created for helping us get dinner on the table. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about Recipe Club and how it works.
Yes. So Recipe Club is a system to help overwhelmed parents get weeknight dinner on the table for their kids. And the reason that we do this is because of that connection. And we do that in Recipe Club by offering 2 things. We have a weekly meal plan that we put out every week. If you don't want to make any decisions, we'll make the decisions for you. We're happy to do that. And with those weekly meal plans, you get printable shopping lists, and you get all of the recipes right there. All of our recipes have no ads. That's one thing I found so frustrating about the experience of cooking online these days, is that when you go to search for a recipe, oftentimes there's a very long story ahead of that recipe, and there's so many different banner or pop-up ads. It's a frustrating experience. And so we tried to solve those problems so that when you are using Recipe Club, it is just the recipes that you need. Your screen will never go dark. It has totally been formatted for the person who just is trying to get dinner on the table. in addition to our membership, where you get access to those meal plans and our library of hundreds of recipes that have been specifically formatted for busy families, we also have a product called the Recipe Binder. And this was so interesting. We were working on developing an app, and as we started talking to our members, a lot of them started to tell us that they hated the experience of cooking from their phones and that they prefer to cook from a printed recipe. But the problem with traditional cookbooks is you'll cook 2 or 3 recipes out of a book, and then you stick it up on the shelf and you forget about it. And then you start collecting a lot of cookbooks. So they told us, well, I've got this binder, but it's a mess. It's disorganized. It's from Staples. It's not very pretty. And when I print out those recipes from the internet, usually they're on 2 pages and they've got ads on them. So we decided to create a really beautiful recipe binder, beautiful enough that you would be proud to have it displayed on your countertop. It's coated in vegan leather so that it'll withstand any spills from marinara sauce to olive oil. And it becomes a place where you can store the recipes that you make most often. So that when you are meal planning and you know that if you go to Pinterest or to Instagram to find that recipe that you saved, that you likely will fall down the rabbit hole of Instagram and not come out for another 45 minutes. You can just go to your recipe binder where you have those recipes that you know you rely on most. And we formatted all of our recipes so that they look like they're a page straight out of a cookbook, so that it's a beautiful experience, because I do care about the aesthetics and I do want cooking to be this creative process that feels satisfying and kind of scratches that itch. And so we're really proud of the fact that we think it's a very beautiful product and it pairs so nicely with our Recipe Club membership. So when you head off inevitably on summer vacation and you come back and you know there's nothing in the fridge and you have no idea how to get back in the habit of making dinner, that's what Recipe Club is for. Every week we follow the same steps. We provide the meal plans. If you don't want to follow our meal plans, we have a tool where you can build your own meal plans, but it's just a consistent spot where we are always providing simple dinner inspiration for people who value getting dinner on the table.
Yes. What I love so much about Recipe Club is that it's really kind of solving that most time-consuming and mentally exhausting part of the equation, which is the deciding part. You know, that is such a burden. But over time, you're also able to build this recipe binder of meals that you know you and your family love, that you know that they're going to enjoy. So that, like you said, when you get back from vacation, you're trying to do that meal planning, it's super easy. You can reference the binder to see, you know, what meals are we going to make ahead, or we can let you do the planning for us. So then mealtime does become about the connection. It's less about those complaints or the negotiating over, you know, the 3 more bites that you need to eat before you can leave the table, because we have all been there. But we talked a little bit about, you know, your kids' plate. It is so creative. I've never seen this from any other meal planning service. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about that, and also the QR code tutorials that are included with your recipes.
Yeah, so we call them our deconstructed dinner plates. And this came from out of a frustration of, it's important to me to cook. I like to cook. But I was making meals and it felt like sometimes I was the only one eating them. And so we just kind of created a family rule. Mom makes one recipe, or dad, we make one recipe, and I am willing to deconstruct that. But I'm not willing to be a short order cook on a Tuesday night for everyone in the family and make someone mac and cheese and someone rice and chicken and enchiladas for the others. And so it's something we really try and emphasize with our members of Recipe Club who are raising young kids, because there's nothing wrong with your kid if they're a picky eater. In fact, you should expect it. And they will grow out of it. But for me, it's been interesting. My kids in particular were they did not want the food to touch. So they were big fans of the segmented plates. And so I found that when I would start making a recipe, if I would pull out those segmented kid plates before I started cooking, it was almost a reminder that before I added the shredded rotisserie chicken into the skillet enchiladas, I was going to take some of that shredded chicken and put it on their plate. And so that way, by the time I finished the recipe, their plates are ready to go too. And I'm not scrambling at the last minute trying to get something that I know that they'll eat on the plate. And so that's why we provide a visual image for that deconstructed dinner plate for every recipe, because I live that. That is my life. I live with picky eaters and I know what a help that can be, especially when it's 5 o'clock and you're trying to get dinner on the table. And I can't think about anything else. I just need someone to show me. We're there to show you. This is how you can deconstruct this specific recipe. And that is definitely one of the most loved features in Recipe Club. And then you asked about the QR codes as well. So since we know that so many of our members prefer to cook from a printed recipe, there's a QR code on the bottom of all of our recipes that takes you directly to a step-by-step tutorial video for how to make that recipe. And we've been very deliberate in making those videos under 2 minutes because we know you're overwhelmed and we know you don't have a bunch of time. And so it's just, if you tend to be more of a visual learner, we provided that resource as well.
I love that. So good. So, no two households are the same and everyone has their picky eaters and their different priorities and needs in the kitchen. But, we also have dietary restrictions and nutrition goals and budgetary limitations, time constraints, all of the things. So what are some of the ways that Recipe Club is able to accommodate for a wide variety of members with different needs?
Yeah. So for every single recipe in Recipe Club, we offer a gluten-free version and a vegetarian version. And that's something we're really proud of, that we worked to develop those recipes so that you can accommodate the needs of those members in your household, or if your whole family eats vegetarian. So all 467 of the recipes that you'll find in Recipe Club have an option to accommodate those needs as well. We're also really proud of the filtering system we have in Recipe Club, where if you want a vegetarian meal and you've got avocados, tomatoes, and cotija cheese on hand, you can put those ingredients in and then it will populate the recipes that accommodate those needs. And so that's hopefully helping our members utilize the ingredients they have on hand to save a little bit more at the grocery store and to just waste less, because no one likes to waste food. So those are a couple of things that we've done in Recipe Club that have been received really well by our members.
I love a good tech solution to a problem. I love that so much. But the one thing that I'm most excited to chat with you about is, speaking of tech features, Recipe Club shopping lists integrate directly with Instacart. So tell me more about this amazing feature.
Yes. So I didn't enjoy the pandemic, just like nobody enjoyed the pandemic. But let me tell you, I'm convinced that the greatest thing to come out of the pandemic was online grocery shopping. And I know that there are still people who want to go and pick out their bananas, and I get it. And I'm a big Trader Joe's shopper, and Trader Joe's does not do online grocery shopping. So I still go to the store. I still do that. But especially given the fact that I am a working mom, I've got young kids, the amount of time I save from not having to go to the grocery store. And it's not just the time. I'm convinced that I'm saving money because of just the impulse buying that would happen to the groceries at the grocery store, especially if I had my 7-year-old in tow. She was adding all sorts of the stuff to the cart that I was like, wait a second, how did those get in here? So I'm a huge fan of online grocery shopping, and we wanted to make it as simple as possible for you to view a Recipe Club recipe and simply click one button and have all of the ingredients from that recipe added to your shopping cart. We've utilized Instacart as our partner because Instacart covers 770 different grocery stores throughout the US. So regardless of where you live, you can be covered there. And Instacart's really improved over the past couple of years when it comes to price transparency. I use coupons on Instacart. I'm able to see the stores that have reduced fees for pickup versus delivery. And it's just been a huge, it's a tool and a system that I use and love in my life. I don't know that I'll ever go back to shopping for all of my groceries in person. And so we make that accessible for all of the recipes in Recipe Club. You can just simply add them with one button. And as you build your meal plans in Recipe Club, let's say you want to pull in the apple cheddar grain bowls and the sweet potato green curry, and you're only cooking 2 things that week. We've got a button you can click that says generate shopping list. It generates your shopping list. You can click the things that you already have on hand and then send that straight to Instacart and have your groceries show up in an hour.
That is amazing. And yes, good point about the impulse shopping. I get most of my groceries at Target, and that is a scary place to do grocery shopping because there's just way too many bright, shiny objects. So where can our listeners go to connect with you and get started with Recipe Club?
Awesome. Well, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok. I'm Kelsey Nixon there. And kelseynixon.com is where you can learn more about Recipe Club or the Recipe Binder. We do have people that are just interested in the binder, not Recipe Club. And we've just made that available that people can purchase the binder without being members. Although we do find that they work really well with one another if you are truly looking to set up a system to make dinner feel more manageable. But yeah, Kelsey Nixon, that's where you'll find me. I've also got a podcast, Allison. It's called Kitchen Prescription, and it comes out every week. And the reason I created the podcast was to help you decide what to make for dinner. So it's a quick 20-minute listen. It starts with me offering 3 simple dinner suggestions you could throw on your meal plan for the week. And then every week we dive into one simple topic in the kitchen that hopefully makes your life a little easier. Whether that's what knives should you buy or how to meal prep for dinners on the go. That's kind of how it works. And so it's also just kind of funnels into that simple dinner system, as a lot of our Recipe Club members will listen to the podcast and map out their own meal plans for the week. And that just is a good committed time for them to do that every week. And it works well.
I love it. I love the simple practical tips that you share on the podcast. And if you're listening to this episode in the month of July 2024, Kelsey has a special promo code for you to check out Recipe Club. You just enter code SCHOOL24 at checkout. You're going to get 3 months for the price of 1, which is awesome. So thank you for sharing this generous offer with our listeners, Kelsey. And we're also going to link up all of Kelsey's info, and the promo code will be in the show notes for you at AllisonLombatis.com/podcast.
And before I go, Allison, I have to share my love for outfit formulas. Truly, I've now become a woman who's interested in systematizing every aspect of my life. And it's just what I was looking for. I spent, speaking of the pandemic, I spent one too many years in yoga pants, and I was sick and tired of it, but I needed a system for me to not feel so overwhelmed when I went into my closet. And so anyways, I just want to thank you for offering that. It's a wonderful service and just what someone like me was looking for.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Kelsey. I'm so happy. It makes me so happy to make other people's lives easier too. So thank you for sharing that. It has been an absolute delight chatting with you today. Thank you for inspiring our listeners. Thank you for sharing such amazing practical tips and getting us to really just rediscover the joy of cooking and the connection that comes with it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Allison.
I would love to hear your thoughts about Kelsey's approach to cooking. Did any of her suggestions inspire you to approach mealtime in your house differently? What part of meal planning is the most challenging for you? What was your favorite part of today's episode? Let's open a dialogue and connect. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube as Allison Lombatis, and I would love to hear from you. Remember, you are worthy. Style is a skill anyone can learn, and closet and cooking contentment is possible. I believe in you. Thanks for tuning in.